Hello, I'm Andrew. I'm an SEO consultant for my company Optimizely, based in Cambridge in England. I'm working with the folks here at Wix to help you navigate keyword research and content strategy. If you want to get more people on your site or your clients' sites, keyword research and content strategy are going to be crucial to drive the results that you're looking for. Keyword research helps you find and engage with your client's target audience, while a strong content strategy keeps you focused on creating things that actually have a good chance of ranking well in search. But before we dive in, let me give you a quick look at everything you'll learn in this module. Here's what's coming up. First, Keywords 101. What are they? What aren't they? What do you do with the keywords when you have them? And then keyword research. How do you find good keywords? What tools or systems can you use to find them? And what should you do when you don't have any data? Next up, target keywords and clusters. This is all about narrowing the field a bit, finding which search queries to focus on. Then we'll cover intent and content, how to make sure that you provide what your target customers are actually looking for. And Google's algorithm updates, what they are and how they should affect your SEO planning and strategy. And lastly, competitor research, how to find out more about your rivals and how to beat them. By the end of this module, you'll know the basics of keyword research and how to use those keywords in your content strategy so you can plan more effectively and create stronger content to achieve better performance in search. So let's jump right in with our first lesson, all about keyword basics. I'll see you then. Let's talk about one of the most important elements of any SEO strategy, keywords. In this lesson, we'll take a look at what keywords are and how they translate into actual search queries that people are typing into Google to find your client's site. Let's get started. Let's say your client is a plumber. So if someone opens up Google and types in a keyword, say, emergency plumber. In that case, emergency plumber is a keyword. When someone searches for a keyword, Google's algorithms makes hundreds of computations to bring back the best answers, usually in less than half a second. Google Search uses hundreds of ranking signals to work out what the best results for that specific search might be. And those results can change daily, hourly, even minute to minute. A query can have one word like plumber, shoes, or HBO, but keywords can be anything a user types into a search engine, like, why does my dog eat grass? It may not even be a question or even a full sentence like, airport transfer near me. The search engine tries to understand what the searcher wants from that query, and that can vary based on all sorts of things like where in the world you are. A classic one is Americans searching for chips, want a very different thing than a British person would. The time of day, even the device that people are using can influence the sort of results that Google will bring back. People on mobile devices are much more likely to want to go somewhere based on their search results. Search engines have crawled, indexed, and catalogued all sorts of content from all over the web. Their understanding of that content helps them match it up with searchers who might find what they're looking for in it. When you know how to find keywords and use them in your content correctly, you have a better chance of being right up there when your target audience searches for what you have to offer. Alright, stay with me, but I'm going to actually suggest we scrap the word keyword for now. When we're talking about SEO on the whole, it can be a bit confusing, it can feel limiting, and a lot of times it can be misused. No person has ever said, oh, I need to get that thing, let me go and put some keywords into Google. SEO marketing pros might say things like, you should use the keyword in your meta description of your page, or how many keywords is your page ranking for? But for this module, where we'll be talking about both of these groups and a ton of different use cases, search query is actually a more accurate term. It gets right to the heart of what we're really doing. Searchers are looking for something, and you want to make sure that they find your something by ranking for whatever search query they're going to use to find it. So remember, whenever the terms keyword and search query come up, we're talking about the same things. So how many words are there in a good search query? So often in SEO, it depends. Your brand name could be a one-word search query. If you're Nike or Apple or Wix, you want to rank number one when somebody searches for Nike, Apple, or Wix, right? Same is true for you and your client's business. If their business is called Paul's Plumbing in Pittsburgh, they're going to want to rank number one when somebody searches for Paul's Plumbing in Pittsburgh. But that business might also want to rank well for a short search query like emergency plumber, and for longer search queries like plumber in Pittsburgh who can install a wet room and a shower. The first search query has just 2 words. The second one has 11. For our Pittsburgh-based plumber, both of them would be pretty great targets to rank well for, and both could drive a lot of business. So a good search query is really whatever your target customers might search for when you want to show up high up in the search results. Now, a crucial thing to remember here is the difference between what you would like to rank well for and what you should or even could rank well for. We'll cover that in more depth later on, but it's worth remembering now that if you sell shoes, ranking number one for a search query like shoes might seem great, but the number of people who actually want to give your business money might be better from a more specific search query like buy shoes or buy men's shoes. A person searching for shoes might want to buy shoes, but they could be looking for men's shoes or women's shoes or kids' shoes or trainers or high heels or just pictures of shoes. Shoes is pretty unspecific, right? So for that reason, buy shoes or even buy red high heel shoes in a size 6 might be better, because assuming that you do sell red high heels, that potential customer has just pre-qualified themselves as wanting to buy exactly what you're selling. You're not wasting their time leading them to things they don't want, and you're not wasting your time chasing after customers who want something that you don't have. All right, now that we've covered what keyword really means, we'll talk through how those search queries are used to create content. I'll meet you in the next lesson. We'll get into it. You know what a search query is. Now let's talk about how they can help you. Search queries help you figure out what content you need and how to optimize your existing content to match what people are searching for. If you do this well, and if Google agrees that your content answers the query, they'll put your site higher in the search engine results pages, or SERPs. A good way to think about what search engines want is to remember what jobs search engines are trying to do. So let's go straight to the source. Here's a snippet from Google's mission statement. Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So Google wants to help searchers access useful information. Your job is to make clear to Google that you have that useful information, or in other words, that your content answers the searcher's questions. That means you shouldn't just be creating sales pitches or writing to hit a target word count, and you're not just keyword stuffing. More on that later. It should genuinely be useful, helpful, and meet the user's needs. So how do you do that? Well, step one should be obvious. Have useful information on your website. Let's say a searcher wants to know how to pick the correct tennis size racket for their child. If you're just selling tennis rackets saying, buy this, buy this, buy this, that doesn't really answer their search query, so Google isn't likely to place your page at the top of the SERPs. You need to make sure your website is sending signals to Google pointing out that this content fulfills the intent that these searchers have. So with the tennis racket example, you could write a blog post that talks about the factors you need to consider when buying a racket for your child. Is it based on their age or their height? What about the weight of the racket? Are there different rackets for beginners versus someone who's a bit more proficient? Does it matter if you're left or right-handed? If you sell tennis rackets, you probably know the answers to those questions. So show that to Google. If your content answers the query directly, Google can start to build up a picture of your client's business and their expertise and rank them accordingly. There are a few best practices that you can start using right now that will take you a long way. First, put the user's search query in your content. Or in other words, repeat the question in your answer. For users looking for things to do on their holiday, they might search for something like best things to do in Lisbon with kids. And your answer might be the best things to do in Lisbon and Portugal with kids are. This works well because I'm making it clear what question or questions I'm answering in my content. And I'm making it specific. It's not just top 10 things to do in Lisbon, but specifically with kids. Then, once you've answered the search query, you can use it as a jumping off point to find the next one. So with this query, you could think about what they'd ask next and try and answer those questions. One more tip. Be specific. Don't try and target everyone at every price point, every geography, every product spec or demographic with one piece of content. It won't work. Especially for customers with more of a purchase intent. You might want to get even more specific, like the best Android-compatible wireless headphones for under $200. Again, I'm considering my target searcher here. They have specific needs based on their device, Android, the sort of product they want, wireless headphones, and their budget, under $200. I'm not trying to be everything for everyone with one piece of content. I'm just trying to find the people who are looking for the specific thing that I have. As always, there are some things you should absolutely not do when it comes to keywords. So here are some of the worst practices to avoid. We've all seen those awful pages where they're trying to jam a target keyword in so many times it becomes almost laughably unreadable. Like, If you're looking for a tennis racket in Boston and you're in Boston and you need a tennis racket, you should contact a tennis racket store in Boston for your tennis racket needs in Boston. Whilst this does include your target search queries, you shouldn't do this or anything like it. This is called keyword stuffing. Not only does it look awful, but think about the impression it might make on your customers. Even if you did rank well in their search, what are they going to think of your business when they land on a page filled with that keyword stuff nonsense on it? Google specifically mentions keyword stuffing as a no-no in their documentation. If you do it, they may place a manual action on your website, a penalty marker against it. Or more likely these days, they're just going to algorithmically downgrade your site in the rankings. Let's run through a few other no-nos that can get you one of those manual penalties. Don't use scraped content, literally stealing content from other websites, embedding it in yours, or even just copy and pasting it. Don't use auto-generated content. There's a world of trouble waiting here. Taking one paragraph from one site, one from another, some more from a third, and trying to glue them all together does not make a unique piece of content. You might also think that using automation techniques to generate content around a keyword or a topic or an event is a valid strategy. It's not. Don't use hidden text or links. It's not a clever way to avoid Google spotting your keyword stuffing. Overall, if it seems easy to do and it creates lousy content that's more focused on ranking in search than helping people, don't do it. And the last no-no, unhelpful internal link text. What do I mean by that? Well, when you link from one of your pages to another one of your own pages, that's called an internal link. You can use search queries in your internal links to help users and search engines understand what the linked to page is about, as well as which other pages on your site you'd like to rank and for which search queries. The anchor text is the text that usually goes blue or changes color when you click on it. Users who are blind or partially sighted, they might use assistive technology like a screen reader to help them understand a web page. Many screen readers will literally say link and then read the anchor text. So something like click here isn't as great of a link as it might seem. Far too many websites have links that say things like, to see our latest price list, click here, and click here is the anchor text. So for anyone using a screen reader, there's no way to be sure what they'll find if they click that link. It's bad for users, it's bad for search engines, and it's bad for accessibility. Just don't do it. If you look at that same sentence, see our latest price list, that whole thing could be a link, and it'd be much more useful than click here, and it would be better anchor text too. But if it was something like, see the cheapest tennis racket deals in Boston, or something even more targeted and more relevant to your business, that'd be even better. That way you're being useful for all your website visitors, including the blind and partially sighted ones. Now, it's time to stop talking in hypotheticals, start putting your new SEO smarts to use. From our next lesson on, we'll be putting together an extensive list of search queries. Then we'll look at how all of these best practices apply to them. Meet me in the next lesson to get started. You have an idea of what a keyword or a search query is and what to do with them. Now comes the crucial part. How do you find them? This is where keyword research comes in. Basically, you want to know what people are typing into Google when they're looking for something that you do or sell. What you really need here is data. The good news is there are lots of places you can go to get that data, and lots of them are completely free. But the great news is you probably already have some of them. You just may not know it yet. In this lesson, you'll learn to set yourself up for effective keyword research. By the end, you'll know where to look for the search queries and how to store them in a format that'll keep you organized. There are plenty of places to find effective search queries for your content, including Google Search Console, which is data direct from Google about how and when your website shows up in the search results. Site search in your website, literally your customers telling you what they're looking for. Don't sleep on this one. Comments, which give you great insights into the language and words that your customers use to talk about your offering. Customer support data, which is first-hand information from your customers about the problems they're facing or the solutions they're looking for. Customer surveys made up of direct feedback from the people you want to reach, giving you ideas and the language to reach them with. And third-party tools like Semrush, which can simplify a lot of these processes and usually have a lot more data than most of us have access to. Each of those offer different sorts of information. So before we jump into collecting search queries, it's important to have somewhere where you're going to put all the data you collect. You're going to want to set up a spreadsheet or a document where you can keep track of the search queries you're interested in and some key facts about them once you start to gather the data. I recommend a spreadsheet because they tend to be a lot easier to filter, sort, group, and organize later on. By the end of this course, you could have hundreds or even thousands of queries, so we'll prioritize them based on multiple factors like volume, topic, competition, and user intent. Throughout the rest of this module, I'll be gathering search queries for a made-up company that gives financial advice on mortgages. We will call it Andrew's Finance. But even though this is a made-up company, my data is I'm using from a real client that I worked with, so you can see how I do it in a real-life example. I suggest that you follow along with a specific business in mind, either your own or one of your current clients. The important thing here is that you're focused on an end goal. My goal for this research is to explore topics that this client could create content for that are relevant to their business, useful for their target customers, have a high volume of people searching for them, and that the business has a decent chance of ranking well for in search results. So here's my spreadsheet. In this example, I've used Semrush data to get started. That's because this client hasn't produced much content before. They're quite new to the business, so they didn't really have a great deal of useful data in places like Search Console yet. So in my spreadsheet, I've got the keyword, the one I may be interested in, the seed keyword, that's the term that I gave to Semrush to get it to go and find more search term ideas for me. More on that later. A subtopic, that's handy for subdividing the topics. Search volume, how many people are searching for it per month, which Semrush can tell me. Keyword difficulty, that's a proprietary metric from Semrush that tells me how easy or hard it might be for them to rank well in that query. CPC is the average cost per click for ads that appear in the SERPs for that query. Competitive density, again, this one only relates to paid for ad campaigns, but it can be a useful indicator for us SEO folks to see how difficult and how worthwhile it might be to rank in those search results. The logic here is if dozens of companies are paying to appear in the search results, it can often mean that ranking there organically can be worth working on. And the number of results. This is how many results Google brought back for this search. Often it's a lot. SERP features we'll cover a bit more later in the course. And finally, trend, which can indicate seasonality. So take some time getting your own spreadsheet set up, and then meet me in the next lesson where we'll start adding your search queries to it. Google Search Console is a free tool provided by Google that gives you data about how, when, where and why your site appears in Google search results. In Search Console, you can see exactly what search queries people are putting into Google that makes your site come up in the search results, whether you're ranking first or 51st. It'll show you how many times you appeared in search results, how many times your site was clicked on, where, on average, you ranked, all sorts of good stuff. If you've already integrated Search Console into your Wix site, like I have, you can access all of that good data right there in the dashboard too. So let's dive in. The business I'm using here, Andrew's Finance, gives financial advice to individuals mostly regarding mortgages. They want to attract more customers in general, but mostly people looking for mortgage advice on residential properties. So with that target audience in mind, let's take a look in Google Search Console. We can see a bunch of branded keywords like Andrew's Finance Cambridge, and even some possible typos that people might search for, like Andrew Finance and Andrew Finank. Remember, Google Search Console is only going to show you information about search queries you're already ranking for. If you're looking to break into a new audience or launch a new product, the information here might be useful, but it's not going to be complete. Where it is super useful is when you're researching what kinds of terms customers already use. Do more of them use mortgage broker or mortgage advisor, or maybe financial advisor? Often the language you'll use inside your business isn't the same as what your customers would. You may think of yourself as a mortgage broker, but if your customers are all searching for a mortgage advisor, that's the term you should use more often in your content. A really useful tool in Search Console when you're doing keyword research is filtering. Hopefully, whichever brand you're working with ranks quite well for their brand name. And by using the filtering system in Google Search Console, you can include or exclude certain words or phrases. So in my case, I may want to exclude any searches that have the word Andrew, which would cover any terms that would have Andrew or Andrews in them with or without the apostrophe. It can really help you zero in on the search terms people are using in Google when they don't already know who you are and aren't already looking for your business. If they've already heard of you and are specifically searching for Andrew's Finance and Andrew's Finance mortgage advice, that's great. You've built a strong brand. But most often, when you're planning out new content, you're trying to reach new people who don't know how terrific you are yet. Having excluded the brand terms, you'll see a ton of search queries that people have put into Google when my clients' websites come up. Andrew's Finance might see search queries like Financial Advisor UK and Online Mortgage Help UK. You'll also notice we've got impressions data here, rather than search volume like we had on our spreadsheet. While search volume refers to the number of times a query has been searched for, impressions indicates the number of times the site in question has appeared in the search results for that query. They're not the same thing, but for our purposes, they're a good enough proxy for each other, since they both give an indication of how popular a given search query is. Once you filter your results, you might want to narrow them down even more. In my example, I've got over 1,000 search queries, which is the limit where Search Console will stop. So I want to add some more filters in here. One place to start is by filtering out queries that you already answer with a piece of content and then rank really well for. You may also find competitor brand names in there, which isn't always a bad thing, but for the examples we're talking about here, we're probably not going to write a takedown piece on our competitors, so we can exclude those too. You may also want to set yourself a threshold of monthly search impressions. If a search term has, say, fewer than 10 searches a month, maybe it's not worth going after at this stage. Depends on the term, but it can be a good limiter if you need to reduce the spread a bit. Once I've done all of that and I've got around 1,000 or so search queries that I'm happy with, or at least that I feel deserve a bit more investigation, I'm going to take all of those search queries, paste them over in my spreadsheet. You can also just click on Export in Search Console, make your life a bit easier. It'll put all those search terms straight into a new spreadsheet, and you can bring them over into the sheet you're working on. After that, you should end up with anywhere from around 200 to 1,000 search queries. At this stage, we're in an expansive mindset. We want lots of search queries. So next up, we're going to take a look at finding even more keywords through your client's site search. One of the best places to look for search queries is on the client's site itself. Their search bar is one of the best places to see exactly what people type in when they've already decided to do business with your client. And while you might need to sort through some of the nonsense, like someone on your floral website searching for wedding cakes and wondering why you don't sell them, you can find some real gems in there. And not just SEO gems either. I've worked with clients who are able to use their site search data to help them refine their products or even develop whole new ones by seeing exactly what customers were looking for. So in this lesson, let's look at everything we can do with the data that you have right on your client's site. Let's take a look at some data from my site, Andrew's Finance. We can see what people have been searching for here in our reporting data. I'm using Google Analytics 4, but you can use any tool you want. Most analytics software will let you track site search data. But if you're using GA4, head to Engagement, then Events, and look under View Search Results Event. If it's set up correctly, you should be able to see what users punched into your site search. Again, this is so useful because it's showing you exactly what people already on your website are looking for. They're not on Google just exploring a topic, they want something specific, and whether they're right or wrong, they think they might be able to find it on your site. So while you're looking at this data, pay attention to a few key things. What specific words do they use? Does your site actually have what they were looking for? And did they find it? You can create yourself a whole to-do list just from this data. But for now, pick out some of those search terms you're interested in and add that good stuff into your spreadsheet. Now you know how to find some useful gems for your keyword research in all that data. In our next lesson, we'll take a look at finding keywords within the comments on your client's sites. See you there. In our last lesson, we talked about getting search queries directly from your target audience by looking at what they're searching for on your client's site. But that's not the only place you can hear directly from your customers. Comments, reviews, feedback, they're all great places to look for search terms, from what problems customers have to which words they use to describe them, and how they're talking about both things. So in this lesson, we'll walk through how to find and make the most of this data. There might be a few spots on your client's sites where they can get comments and reviews. Maybe they have a few blog posts that draw lots of comments and discussions, or reviews on their Google business profile, or listings on Trustpilot or Yelp. Whether or not you have 5-star reviews across the board, these are all valuable ways to find out how customers actually talk about your client. Depending on how many comments your client has and where they are, you may want to export or download them, or even just copy and paste them into a document. Then you can start to spot the terms, queries, and phrases that keep coming up. Tools like word clouds or even AI tools like ChatGPT can be useful here to give you an idea of which words and phrases come up the most often. Some phrases and terms you're going to add straight as they are, straight into your spreadsheet. Like if I see that a lot of my comments mention bank or banks, I want to add that into my spreadsheet straight away. Others you may want to make a note of to use as a variant. So if I notice that a lot of those people mentioning banks are also mentioning their building society, that might be something I'd want to add into my list too. Another amazing resource that's often overlooked is your client's help desk or support team. These are the people in your organization that usually have the most interaction with customers on a day-to-day basis. Go and talk to them. If they have a ticket system for support issues or something similar, tap into that too. Writing a blog post on how to fix a common issue that customers face can be a win-win. Not only could it get you lots of traffic and great rankings, but it can also help reduce the workload of the support team and save them having to repeat the same advice over and over again. Look at the language that the customers use when they contact the support team. What issues are they having? How do they describe it? We're looking for commonly occurring themes, phrases, and words. Some of them might be easy to turn into a piece of content straight away. Others will just be ideas, words, or phrases for you to consider when building your spreadsheet of research search terms. Pull that data, add your picks to the list. So now you've seen how to mine comments, reviews, and support tickets for keyword research. Next up, we'll take a look at finding keywords within customer surveys. There's one more internal source of keyword data: surveys. Your client or company may have already done some customer surveys at some point. If you can get access to those, that's great. But if not, or if you've never done one, now could be a good time to start. Surveying existing customers will give you a lot of insights into how they think, what problems they face, and the language they use when they talk about you. Here, I've got a set of customer survey data. Now, depending on your survey, you might have lots of data or very little. Multiple choice survey answers aren't really going to give you a great deal of usable data for keyword research. But there's lots of potential in short answer style questions, often those at the end of the survey like, is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Like before, we're looking for common themes and topics here. So when people talk about a specific product or service, what do they say? Is it the price? Is it the size, the delivery time? What did they like or dislike? If price is a popular topic, then our content may need to reflect that. So maybe we'll include words like cheap or best value or luxury depending on the price point. Or if our survey respondents tell us they chose us company because of the fast delivery times, we could include phrases like next day delivery or fast delivery to appeal to even more customers looking for that. Whatever it is for you, spot those trends and add them to your list. And a quick note, you might worry you have some missing data or empty columns in your spreadsheet, like on the search volume. Don't worry, we'll talk about how to fill all this in the missing information later in another lesson. For now, we want all of the search query ideas that we can get. All right, we've covered a few different ways you can start your search query research right on your client's site. In our next lesson, we'll start to look at the ways you can find keywords with third-party tools. I'll meet you there. Did you know you can get free, useful data for your SEO strategy directly from Google? You can enter any search query into Google Trends and find out how it's performed over time, either in the last few days, months, or even years. This is great because it's data direct from Google that you can get some seriously valuable insights from, like comparing similar phrases to see which one's more popular, tracking searches for a query to see if they're going up or down over time or if they're seasonal, and comparing 1 or 2 to 3 or 4 other queries to see which comes out on top. You can even narrow it down to trends in specific countries, which is great because you may find a large part of your audience is located somewhere that you hadn't even considered targeting. And the best part, it's completely free to use. So let's give it a closer look. Now, for Andrew's Finance, I can use Google Trends to test some of the assumptions or theories that I have and to find ideas for new search phrases related to some of my target areas. Let's start with an example I've already talked about in this course: mortgage advisor versus mortgage broker. First, I'm going to narrow it down to the UK and to the last 5 years of data so we can get a good broad picture. This is interesting. It shows me that in Northern Ireland, advisor is more popular than broker. But in England, that's my biggest target market, it's about a 50-50 split. So if I was going to write a piece of content targeting customers in Northern Ireland, I may want to tilt my content more towards using the term advisor. It's not necessarily something you need to add to your spreadsheet, but it's a good find to share with whoever writes your content. Let's look down here at the related queries section. When people are searching for the term mortgage advisor, what else are they searching for? Google Trends can tell us. Mortgage advisor jobs near me. Not that useful for me unless I was hiring. L&C Mortgages, that's a brand. Mortgage advisor near me, that's an interesting one. So customers want someone who's based near to them. That seems important. Let's explore that a bit. When I click on it, I'll see the trend data for that term, and I'll repeat the process. So let's look at the related searches for mortgage advisor near me. There's more about jobs and financial advisors, but on page 2 we can see something else that's interesting: independent. People want independent mortgage advisors and independent mortgage advisors near me. They don't want advice from a bank or someone they feel has a vested interest. They want independent advice. For my client's business, this is great. They are independent. And now I've got some data to back up that this is important to their customers. You can repeat this process again and again. But something you might notice is that Google Trends doesn't actually have numbers. It uses a percentage-like scale, where 100 is the most popular a query's ever been, and 0 represents when no one searched for it. Looking at the data, I can see the search terms I'm looking at often peak around the start of the year, and they tail off in the build-up to Christmas holidays around about December. Again, that's not really a data point that we can capture on our spreadsheet, but it is useful information. It can help you schedule your content more effectively. If you know that New Year brings a big surge in interest around a specific area, you know that you need to have your content finished and ready on your site before New Year comes around. This is a brief introduction to Google Trends, so you can start comparing terms, exploring related queries, and using that data to build out your research around search terms, all for free. Next, we'll take a look at some of the third-party tools that you can pay for to get even more keyword insights. Paid SEO tools like Semrush, Moz, Ahrefs or Systrix can save you a lot of time hunting around for search queries and looking into search results. Lots of these tools can give you data about the popularity of a search query, like how many people search for it in a month, which websites are currently ranking well in the search results, things like that. They can also help you broaden your research by suggesting related search queries, expanding them into questions that searchers often ask, and letting you know when a search result's dominated by a behemoth like an Amazon or a Wikipedia. If you don't already subscribe to an SEO tool, most of them have a free trial period where you can take them for a spin and see which one suits you and your methods best. In this lesson, we're going to use the one that you can integrate right into your Wix Studio dashboard, Semrush. When I start with a new client and use Semrush for query research, the first thing I do is put their web address into the search bar. As we go through this process, remember that Semrush is great, but even they would admit that their data is not exhaustive. The way their tool works is they track around 25 billion keywords. Now that is a lot, but it is not every search term combination. Google says that between 15 and 20% of searches that they see are new to them. No one has ever searched for those things before. The reason I mention that now is because when you put your site into Semrush, it can cause a real panic when you see that you rank for just 2 keywords or some other tiny number. If you compare that to your Search Console data, or even your web analytics, you might think, we're getting all this traffic from organic research, and Search Console says that we rank for these queries, so Semrush must be wrong. But if you're doing SEO for a small business or a relatively new site, Semrush might not have a great deal of data on you yet. Now you may be thinking, what? 25 billion and the search terms that I want aren't in there, come on. So it's worth noting that Semrush has query data for 121 countries and territories. Then if you factor in that dog walker, best dog walker, and the best dog walker are all slightly different technical queries, you can see how even after a 25 billion query database, you can't cover everything. Since I've been using a fictional business with no real data for most of my examples so far, we're going to need to look at a similar site here. So let's use a competitor site and head to Semrush and look at queries that it already ranks for. You can see here it says that this site ranks for many keywords. Semrush also shows us which countries the site ranks in. So here we're looking at the ones that rank in the UK dataset. And then it lists them by keyword with some useful data, like ranking position, traffic, volume, and KD. This is Semrush's metric for keyword difficulty, which lets you know how hard it will be to rank in search results for that query and which URL from that site ranks. That last bit's important. It isn't always the case that your contact page ranks highest for Andrew's finance contact number or whatever. So don't overlook that last bit. For now, we're going to look through these queries and pick out any that are interesting and add them to our sheet. Once you pop those queries into your spreadsheet, I'll meet you in the next lesson and we'll take a look at Semrush's Keyword Magic tool. It's a grandiose name, but Semrush's Keyword Magic tool really is super powerful, and it's easy to use too. You just give the Keyword Magic tool a search query or phrase you're interested in, tell it which market or country you're aiming at, and let it do its thing. So in this lesson, we'll walk through how you can use it during your keyword research. Let's try this with one of the terms we've been looking at a lot in this module, mortgage broker. My focus is the UK, so we set it to that, and off it goes. It comes back with over 24,000 search queries that are in and around mortgage broker. Down the center here, we've got all the keywords. It shows their average search volume, and the keyword difficulty. And we also have CPC, or cost per click, if you were to pay for Google Ads on this search result. Competitive density, which is a marker of how competitive the ad space is, and SF, how many SERP features there are. Then, how many results Google returned on that search. And I think best of all, this little magnifier tool that will show you a screenshot of what the SERP actually looked like when Semrush last saw it. This is great to actually eyeball your competitors in this space. Who's in there? Should they be in there? Are you better than them? Can you outrank them? For example, if I type in Andrews Finance, I can see a university called St. Andrews. Is that what searchers mean when they're searching for my company's brand name? Probably not. Competing with big organizations like a university in search is going to be hard. But there may be opportunities here if I can make a better match on the searcher's intent. I probably won't ever be able to get a better backlink profile than a major university, but I may be able to create better content that's more suited to what the searchers want. With hard work, my client can outrank them. After that, we also have this CTNI marker under the intent column. This is Semrush's understanding of if the query is commercial, transactional, navigational, or informational. These terms are used in Google Search Quality Raters guidelines. More on them in a later lesson, but if you hover over them here, Semrush tells you more about what those mean. Over here on the left, the tool groups the search queries into clusters around a common term. You can see here we've got things like best and UK, which will show you all the search queries that mention those terms. Some might seem irrelevant. You can always filter them out using this little eye icon. So let's take out all these jobs queries. Depending on what you're looking for, you may want to be more or less brutal here. I've got thousands of terms, so I'm going to be pretty heavy-handed with the filtering. Let's take out all those become terms. My client doesn't want to help people become a mortgage broker. And we've got several terms here related to free. We definitely don't want those. The queries you remove from your list will likely be completely different from mine. You may actually want to target customers looking for freebies, or you may work for a recruitment firm looking for aspiring mortgage brokers. The important point here is to really focus on which search intents match with your client's business goals and scrap the rest. Even after being fairly ruthless, I've still got over 15,000 queries. This is where you need to start making some more judgment calls. It's possible that each of these keyword groups like independent, London, and best are worth going after with separate pieces of content, based on keywords like best mortgage broker, best mortgage brokers London, best mortgage brokers UK. Maybe I'd write a piece about why my client's the best mortgage broker, showing off their awards, their certifications, their licenses, and some case studies. Or with queries like independent mortgage broker and how to find an independent mortgage broker, there may be a separate piece here about independent mortgage brokers, like what advantages or disadvantages they have over brokers who are tied to a specific lender. You see where I'm going with this? At this point, you just need to make a call about how many pieces of content you're willing or able to write. This is where you can lean on the work you've done so far. You've researched how competitive the search landscape is, who's already in that space, and how you and your client can fit in, and the data you're gathering here will help too. Is there enough search volume to make it interesting? Are the metrics around the competition and difficulty hinting there's an opportunity here? For now, I really like these queries around independence for my made-up client. So I'm going to take the search queries we looked at. Independent mortgage broker. What is an independent mortgage broker? And how to find an independent mortgage broker. I'm going to add them into my spreadsheet. If you're having the opposite problem, maybe the term you search for is something more obscure or niche, like giraffe milk. It doesn't have many options. There's no groups and opportunities. There's just a small number of keywords here. You can use some of the other features and expand your search. The questions tab will show you queries around your given term that include things like who, what, where, when, how, things like that. We can see here things like, do giraffes produce milk? And can you drink giraffe milk? These questions may plant seeds of ideas in your head for other areas to explore, other keywords to put back into the keyword magic tool, and other topics to dig into and research. If you can find questions here that are related to one of the topic areas you're interested in, that's great. Definitely note those down, add them to your spreadsheet. If we go back to my mortgage broker search, there are questions here like, what does a mortgage broker do? And do mortgage brokers get better rates? These are super interesting for my client because these are questions that could be key blockers for potential customers, even wanting to hire a mortgage broker in the first place. If I can explain to them what a mortgage broker does and reassure them about why they may choose to hire one, that could be a great source of new leads in business. And answering those questions directly will help search engines tie your content back to the questions that searchers are asking. Next, let's open up the Related tab. You can see here there are some typos like mortgage broker and mortgage broker. You can see we've also got Mortgage Advisor UK and Mortgage Advice UK. Maybe some useful synonyms we want to add into our content. Last thing on this tool for now, you can use it to fill in some of the blanks on some of the other data you've got. Remember all those queries we had from Google Trends, the site search and customer surveys and feedback forms? You probably won't have things like search volume or keyword difficulty metrics for those terms. Pop them all into the Keyword Overview tool and now you do. Now you can add those metrics into your spreadsheet, complete your data set. This is just a taster really, we've barely scratched the surface of what this tool can do. As you can probably tell, I'm a fan, but there are lots of other tools out there that will do similar things, and broadly they all work in a similar way. What I'm hoping you've picked up from this lesson is how to use tools like Semrush to explore search queries your client's already ranking for, how to explore topic areas you may be interested in, and how to dig into that data and find topics and search queries that may be useful for your content plan. Before we move on though, there's one more aspect of this we need to explore. What to do when there's no data. That's what we'll look at in the next lesson. I'll see you there. There's one issue that can come up when you're doing keyword research. What if there's no data? Let's say your client's a brand new business in a new, recently discovered niche or industry. They haven't even built their website yet, so there is no Search Console data. There's no analytics data, no site search, nothing. SEO tools can't help with this. It's a super new thing that you do or make or sell. It's only recently been invented. So what do? You need to produce content for this new site, but how do you know which search queries to target? It's definitely difficult, but it's not impossible. Let's get into it. Let's say my client, Andrew's Finance, wants to launch a new product, mortgages for giraffes. Those poor giraffes, they can never find a 3-story tall house with no floors in between. They need a specific financial product to help them with this. Go with me on this. There's definitely not going to be any data on mortgages for giraffes, but with a bit of lateral thinking, you can still start to build out your list of target search queries. Look at the data where people are searching on Google about the problem your new product or service solves, and look at the search results around competitor or similar products. For example, we know that mortgages for giraffes solves the problem of getting a loan for a highly unusual property. We can head to a tool like Semrush and look at data for terms like mortgage for unusual property. Or what about mortgages for listed buildings, ones with lots of separate laws and restrictions on them? That data may be relevant or at least indicative. Even if your new product is utterly unique, there's probably a way that your target customers are currently solving that problem, right? Look into the search results around that. Let's look at the data around mortgage for unusual property. There's something here, but mostly just variations of the same query. So let's try listed building mortgage. Those can be complicated, so it could be a good indicator. Okay. A small number of search queries. Let's look at the questions tab. This is great. Can you get a mortgage on a listed building? And do mortgage lenders lend for listed buildings? So searchers aren't even sure if this is possible. Maybe our folks looking for giraffe housing have the same worries. That's a good starting point. If I want to attract customers looking for mortgage advice for their giraffe house buying dreams, I need to reassure them that their dream is possible and explain how I can help. And as ever, look at Google. Let's try a search for do mortgage lenders lend for listed buildings? We can see all the mortgage and loan companies who've written content addressing this question that Google is showing to searchers. New example. Let's say there's a business that makes wedding cakes opening in Lavenham, a very pretty little village here in England. But there's no data about what the people in that small village are searching for when they want a wedding cake. So what do? A good route here is to substitute the target location for one nearby where there is data. Whilst every area is unique, it can at least give you a good ballpark of what sorts of things people are looking for that may relate to your product or service. I know that Colchester is a city near Lavenham that's likely to have more search volume. So in this case, I can use Semrush to search around terms like wedding cake Colchester. We can see in the topics area groupings things like cheap and price. So price is going to be important. And gluten. People may be looking for gluten-free options. This is all useful information for my wedding cake maker's content plans. Are the good people of Lavenham's wishes for a wedding cake going to be all that different from the folks in Colchester's, a mere 30 miles away? Probably not. But proximity is important when you take this route. Try and stay as close as you can to your target area. To demonstrate, let's look for wedding cakes in Philadelphia in the US. There are some similarities, price is important again, but we've got Eagles in here, the local NFL team. Go Birds. But they use other terms. Bakery crops up, and they want things that are different too, like kosher's in here. It wasn't for Colchester. As with giraffes, it just takes a bit of lateral thinking. So now we've covered just about everything we need in terms of collection. By now, you should have a long list of potential search queries that looks a bit like mine. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about ways we can expand this list even more. I'll meet you there. By now, your list of keywords or search queries could be pretty long. Don't be put off if your spreadsheet already has hundreds or even thousands of data points. Later on, we're going to get to the stage where you'll refine and focus your research down a bit. For now, we want a lovely load of data. So much so that in this lesson, we're going to work on making the list even longer. The first way we're going to expand our lists is by adding qualifiers. A qualifier is anything that modifies or expands on the meaning of a query. Things like best, cheap, or near me. These may vary depending on the client you're working with. Independent may be a key qualifier for Andrew's finance, but for a wedding cake maker, not so much. This works in search too and can really change the meaning and intent behind what a searcher is looking for. A search for mortgage broker would bring a very different set of results from independent mortgage broker. And adding another qualifier like independent mortgage broker near me would bring a different set of results again. But there may be certain qualifiers that you or your client would rather not rank for. Maybe they're a premium brand and they don't want customers associating them with the qualifiers cheap or free. Some other great qualifiers are words like who, what, where, when, how, and why. These are some good opportunities for some of these clients here, like, is it worth going to a mortgage broker? What do they do anyway? When should I hire a mortgage broker? How do I hire a mortgage broker? So take a look through all the keywords and search queries you've gathered so far and see where qualifiers could expand on things. You don't have to do all of this in your head or even on your spreadsheet. There are some terrific tools that can really help. Semrush is one we've already talked about. They have a great feature where you can look at variations around a given keyword or query, where the search query exactly matches your given query, where a specific phrase is used, or where the query broadly matches up. It can also show you questions that people also ask in and around this area too. With our mortgage broker query, we can see questions like, what is a mortgage broker? And what does a mortgage broker do? All of this is gold for your keyword research. Great source for these can also be in the search results themselves. Let's look at a search for mortgage broker in Google. You can see Google's pulling in extra information here in this section called People Also Ask. This is literally Google telling you that people searching for your query are also asking these questions. We've got questions here like, what does a mortgage broker do? Which Semrush already showed us. And some other ones like, is it worth going to a mortgage broker? If we scroll way down to the bottom, there's another section here called related searches. Again, this is Google effectively saying, we think these topics and queries are related to your topic or query. So just jot down any interesting searches and questions like these onto your spreadsheet. I like this one, mortgage broker versus lender. I'm going to add that to my spreadsheet. Finally, there's a great tool that I use called alsoask.com. This tool gathers all the People Also Ask data from Google and automatically goes down the rabbit hole for you. What are the questions that people also ask from this query? Let's look at the query mortgage broker again. AlsoAsk.com goes away and finds all the People Also Ask questions from Google for that term. And you can expand each of these questions into another AlsoAsk.com search, which then shows you even more questions. You can extract all of this data and add it into your research. There's one more way I want to show you to expand your list. As we've already discussed, locations can be really important in search, but it depends on what you're selling and what your customer wants. If I'm looking for a coffee shop in New York, I don't want to see coffee shops in Istanbul, no matter how good their coffee is. But if I'm searching for a landscape gardener, maybe I'll be a little bit more willing to search for a business based a little further away. And if I wanted a web designer or an SEO consultant, maybe where they're based wouldn't matter to me at all. If location is something important to your customers, you're going to want to factor that into your research too. Local or geographic information can be a really important qualifier. Best mortgage broker in Cambridge could become best mortgage broker in Royston or St Neots or Sawston, all big towns and villages near Cambridge. Or you can go the other way, go wider, like statewide or countywide in Cambridgeshire. That is, if your client can and will work in those areas too. The key thing to remember now is you need to create good content that targets the different queries your customers are looking for and where they want that thing. That's a key piece of information. We've got a whole module in this course all about local SEO, where you can learn more on that. Okay, let's regroup. Now we've got thousands of search queries on our list, and we've expanded them to be extremely specific. If you've been following along, you should have a long list of potential queries that look similar to mine by now. In the next lesson, we're going to start filtering and sorting through them to find the best ones for our clients' content. I'll see you there. All right, it's almost time to start filtering, sorting, and planning content based on the list that we've built. But first, a question. What's better than ranking number 1 on Google? Ranking in position 0. Okay, there's really no such thing as position 0, but it's what folks like me in SEO call it, when there's one of those boxes or something that comes up in the SERP above the first organic rank result. We call things like these SERP features. We've conducted all of this research so we can create content that our target customers want and that search engines want to feature in things like the People Also Ask feature and the snippet feature. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand how SERP features affect SEO and how to use your keywords to rank for them. There are all sorts of SERP features. Some look a lot like each other. The last time anyone counted, there are around 20 different types out there. You might be familiar with some of them, like when Google comes up with the answer to a question right at the top of the SERP, when you ask something like, how old's Barack Obama? There's one obvious answer to this, and although Wikipedia ranks in the number 1 organic position, it's down the page even then. There are actually a few SERP features at work here. On the right, we can see a knowledge panel all about Barack Obama. Loads of information there, even links to his social media profiles. And in the middle, we've got an answer box where Google's pulled in a picture of Obama alongside the answer to the question, how old is he? It's even got his birthday underneath. And then some other people's ages that you might want to know next, like Joe Biden, Donald Trump, and Michelle Obama. And then below that, we've got the People Also Ask feature. And each of those can be expanded. And look, even if you collapse them back again, the People Also Ask answers, Google's added even more questions. All of that's taking place in the SERP above the site that's ranking in the number 1 position. That's why it's really important to take a look at the SERPs as part of your keyword research, because sometimes even ranking number 1 isn't the best. As I said, there are even more of these different SERP features. Google can pull in image blocks, news story carousels, information about flights or hotels which have their own SERP features, job listings, reviews, maps, there are lots. If you want to rank in these sorts of SERP features, you need to be a clear authority on that topic, or just have a really authoritative and trusted website overall, like Wikipedia. You'll also need to have a very specific answer to a given question, not something hidden behind a load of guff or sales patter, just a direct answer to a specific question. And it's worth remembering, SERPs look very different on mobile devices than they do on desktops. You should always check both for your target audiences, and lean more heavily to whichever device your customers use more. And if there are SERP features showing up in some of your target search queries, you'll want to factor that into your considerations. Which site currently has them? Dislodging a big site like Wikipedia or Britannica from them is going to be hard. In our example, sites like Experian and Unbiased come up, basically the Wikipedia and the Amazon of this industry. But if a direct competitor has the top spot, say another mortgage broker, you may have more of a chance. Then you can start to ask yourself, what kind of SERP feature is it? And do you have what it needs on your site already? If it's an image SERP feature, do you have high quality images? If it's videos, have you got that? Then take a look at the search volume data. That can help you decide whether the effort you'll need to put in to get that featured snippet is worth it, or if your time and budget would be better spent elsewhere. SERP features are populated by Google using the organic ranking factors. You can't buy your way into them. For most of them, you can absolutely win them in the ranking spots. And if you can get them, they can bring you lots of traffic, lots of attention, and really elevate you in the eyes of your target customers. People place a lot of faith in Google. If you're ranking at the top and have a big box showing off the content on your site on Google, you must be pretty good at what you do, right? How do you rank in a SERP feature? Well, it depends on what kind of SERP feature it is. If you want to rank in the hotel SERP feature, and you're not a hotel, you're going to have a hard time. But if you're targeting an image pack, well, you're going to need lots of unique, relevant, tagged up images relating to that search on your page. And if you want to rank in the featured snippet SERP feature, where Google pulls out text from a web page and shows it right there in the SERP, you're going to need to provide a useful, direct, and succinct answer to the question. Remember a few lessons ago when we talked about putting the questions in your answers? That's a great way to increase the likelihood of your snippet getting the featured snippet too. You probably notice those often appear in SERPs when you ask questions that have one clear, simple answer, like what is X or where is Y. So you want to match those simple questions with simple answers. Another thing that can help you improve your chances across a lot of SERP features is schema. You'll learn more about using schema to improve your rankings in the tech SEO module of this course, but for now, take this as an introduction to keep it in mind. Schema is a special markup code you can use in your site. Many of the Wix Studio apps like Stores, Blog, and Forum already add optimized structured data to your pages. It can add lots of microdata to your web pages to help search engines understand them more easily. Schema was originally set up when lots of the big search engines came together to talk over a problem. Google, Yahoo, Bing, and Yandex all agreed their search engines needed a bit more help understanding pieces of information on some web pages. So they came together to create the schema system, where website owners can mark up their pages to make them crystal clear. Using schema, you can say to search engines, this number is the price of my product, this number is the size, this one is the discount, and this is the weight, and everything gets a lot clearer. Using schema is a great way to help make things clearer and improve your chances of getting featured in rich results, like snippets and the People Also Ask sections. While we won't cover it in any detail now, remember how useful it can be for your content when you learn about it later in the technical SEO module. So now that you know what to look for to up your chances of nailing that top spot on the SERP, you're ready to start narrowing down your list of search queries. Meet me in the next lesson where we'll set up a scoring system for your spreadsheet. I'll see you there. It's finally time to start refining that list of keywords we've been building together. In this lesson, we're going to take your list and basically pan for the gold. There are three main factors to help you decide which queries are good targets and which aren't: search volume, competition, and intent. So let's use a mix of the three and set up a scoring system to help you find the terms that you'll want to focus on. Personally, I like to start by setting up a scoring system because none of these criteria alone should be a reason to rule something in or out. How your scoring system works is up to you. You may need to try a few configurations and see which works best for each client. But usually, I recommend working on a system that effectively gives each metric I'm measuring a score out of 10. Monthly searches over 1,000, that's 10 points. Only 200, maybe only 2 points. High keyword difficulty gets a low score. Lower keyword difficulty gets a high score. Key rivals in the SERPs, high score. A SERP dominated by monsters like Amazon or Wikipedia or your market's equivalent, that's a lower score. And so on, until you're giving each search query a score out of, say, 50 or 60, judging them against the metrics that matter most to you and your clients. Next, it's time to filter our search queries, starting with search volume. When we talk about search volume, we mean the number of people in a given month that search for that term. If you've got a search query from Semrush, you should already have an estimated search volume. If you got it from Search Console, you'll have some data there too. You can use a tool like Semrush to help you fill in any empty spaces. Now be careful here, as there are some queries that are very seasonal. Far more people are likely to search for things like heating and boiler repair when it's cold, and far fewer will search for AC repair. And those trends will reverse once the weather starts to warm up a bit. With seasonal search queries, you need to bear in mind that for large parts of the year, they may get little to no traffic, but then pick up at their peak time before fading away again. Tools like Semrush will give you a monthly average across the year for search volume. But if you've got your data from Search Console or something with a specific date range focus, you may want to double check that you're seeing a good representation of the search volume for that query. Checking for seasonality can be a big help with content scheduling. Though writing about gloves and hats and scarves in summer may feel weird, it's a good idea to get your seasonal content done ahead of time so you can be ready when the surge comes. Now, if you're pulling search volume data from a few different sources, you'll notice they rarely have the exact same data. So remember, you're just looking for an indication. Is it super popular or is it super niche? Depending on your goal, either to compete with the big guns and try and dominate in a particular niche, you may be targeting different levels of volume here. But if you're not sure yet, going after higher search volumes is rarely a bad starting point. So scoring those queries more highly, or using a multiplier so that those queries with more volume score more highly, is a good idea. But just because a search query appears to be bad against one factor or metric, doesn't mean you should remove it from consideration. Many moons ago, I used to work at Lord's Cricket Ground. If you're not a cricket fan, that doesn't matter. Lord's is like Wembley Stadium or the Wrigley Field, the Roland Garros of cricket. There are millions of searches around the term cricket. So ranking high there would be good, right? Not necessarily. We found we had a lot of conflict with people searching for food for their pet reptiles. They wanted crickets. Big search volume isn't always necessarily good, nor is a phrase with low competition.
Do not discount or delete any search query just because it has zero search volume. Zero search volume doesn't always mean that no one searches for it. Maybe it's just so straightforward that Google just gives the answer right up front in the SERP, so no one will ever need to visit your site and find an answer. But more likely, the tool you're using just has very little or no data on it. Take a term like buy red shirt. According to most tools, there's zero search volume for that term. None. But there are over 70 searches a month for plain red t-shirt and 70 for men's red t-shirt. Taking all the combinations and variants of plain and red t-shirt, you're getting to over 140 searches a month. So by ruling out zero volume keywords, you're potentially leaving money on the table. So you've got a list of keywords with search volume and lots of other metrics, and even your own proprietary scoring system. Now it's time to start organizing them into groups. The aim here is to start clustering your search queries around the topics that you're planning to write about. You can see in my example, I've started to split them into topics and subtopics. So on the topic of first-time buyers, it's a big market for my mortgage broker client, I've got subtopics around advice, best, buy-to-let, definitions, deposits, requirements, all sorts of things. And using those subtopic areas, I can set up a little table like this, which shows me how many keywords I have in each subset, how many of them are zero volume searches, what the total search volume is for that group, the average keyword difficulty, and the average score for each query. This makes my life a lot easier. So I know that if I'm going to write an absolutely knockout piece of content for first-time buyer mortgages, I'm going to need to cover these topics. It may be that this is too much to jam into one piece of content. I might need to write 2 or 3 or more. Maybe something around the basics and definitions in my niche, a piece around the requirements and the process, or a specialist piece all around the taxes and regulations and grant schemes. You may need to work with your client on a topic or a topic expert on this part. You're the SEO expert, not the topic expert. Next, let's look at the competition. A great way to size up your competition is to look at the SERP. Search for the query you're interested in on Google. Who shows up? Is it a massive, super authoritative website like Wikipedia or WebMD? Is it a retail giant like Walmart or Amazon? Or is it a more localized competitor, like your client's rival from down the street? You should have a gut feel on how easy or difficult it will be to outrank those businesses. It's not just because companies like Walmart have a huge SEO presence and the budget to match, though that is a big part of it. It's also aligning with what Google wants to show searchers. If Google's only showing major big box retailers and internationally renowned businesses, maybe your client's little mum and pop store isn't exactly what the searchers on that query really want. It's not to say you can't outrank those sites, you can, and it can be really fun and rewarding when you do, but it'll be much harder and it'll usually take much longer than if you're trying to outrank other smaller businesses. While you're looking at these SERPs, there are some questions you'll want to consider. Do you really want to rank in this SERP? Maybe after looking at the results Google's showing, you'll decide you actually don't. If, say, the SERP is showing definitions and explanations of a term that you're only interested in selling a product on to fix that issue, then ranking where people want a definition isn't a great target. If it's not a good intent match, you may want to remove that query from your spreadsheet. Next question. Should you rank in this SERP? Be honest here. If people are searching for a specific place that isn't you, or information that you don't have, maybe you shouldn't try and rank there. Trying to win customers by tricking them or pretending to be something you're not isn't great brand building. If you shouldn't rank for it, just remove that keyword. And the last question, do you have a realistic chance of ranking on this SERP? This one comes back to who else is ranking there right now. If it's big news outlets, big box retailers, world famous brands, or information sites like Wikipedia, ranking is going to be hard. Not impossible, but perhaps not a search query you want to focus on first. This is where you can set your own keyword difficulty metric on your spreadsheet. Easy to rank? Give it a good score. Harder to rank? That's a lower score. Take some time sorting through your spreadsheet and then meet me over in the next lesson where we'll talk about filtering your groups by intent. I'll see you there.
If you spend any amount of time reading through Google's documentation on search, you'll notice a common theme: intent. Where Google are trying a variation of their search algorithms, they have documentation to guide the people doing the testing. The Quality Rater Guidelines, or QRGs, tell those testers what they should be looking for to measure if the search results the algorithm returns are any good. If you read the QRGs, a punchy 176-page read, they mention intent 324 times. There is a whole section called Understanding User Intent. It's safe to say intent is pretty important to Google, and it should be important to you too. Not just because you want to align with what Google's looking for so you can rank well, but because not doing so can be frustrating for both you and your target customers. Imagine you were looking for information about the tallest horse ever measured, and you landed on a website that's just trying to sell you horseshoes and saddles and stirrups. It would be frustrating, right? And as a business owner, if you were selling horseshoes and saddles, you don't want traffic from those people who are looking for information about the tallest horse ever. You probably don't have that information on your website, and people looking for it aren't your target audience. So in this lesson, let's talk about what search intent is, a few different kinds of intent, and how you can score your search inquiries by intent. A lot of times, when people talk about intent in SEO, they focus entirely on the searcher's intent. But for me, it's crucial to remember the business's intent too. What does the business want to do? What audience do they intend to talk to? What sort of content and rankings are going to help them reach the people that they intend to reach? You need to make sure that your content matches up with what searchers want to find. Let's look at an example using some Semrush data. Here are 3 related keywords and their monthly search volumes. Which of these would you want to rank number 1 for? The one with more monthly traffic than the other 2 added together, right? Of course you would. But of course it's a trick question. Let's look at what the actual keywords are. Now which one do you want to rank for, assuming you're an HVAC company? If, like me, you're wondering, what the heck is HVAC? It's kind of the point. You might Google it and find out what it is. It's a common phrase in the US. It stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. If your house or your office is too hot or too cold, you call for an HVAC engineer. But if you don't know what HVAC is, chances of you needing to hire someone for it is already diminished by quite a lot. On the other hand, if you're searching for HVAC near me or HVAC installation, it's much clearer what you want. You might need some help in this area. You're looking for a company nearby to help with something, maybe an installation. The intent behind these queries is much more commercial and therefore much more likely to bring a customer to your website that actually wants to spend some money. In their QRGs, Google talks about 3 broad buckets of intent: do, know, and go. These are as straightforward as they seem. Users with a do intent want to do something. Google's examples are searches like watch Stranger Things. That searcher clearly wants to do something. They want to watch the show Stranger Things. Searchers with a no intent want to know something like how old is Barack Obama? And lastly, go. These are searches where someone wants to go somewhere, either to a specific website or to a physical place. If someone searches for Walmart.com, it's pretty clear they probably want to go to the Walmart website. Similarly, if someone searches Starbucks near me, they probably want to go to a physical Starbucks store. You need to think about intent when you match up your content to search queries that you'd like to rank for. If you end up with a mismatch of intent, you'll struggle to rank well, and even if you do, you're probably going to end up frustrating those customers. If you lead people to a definition of what HVAC is, when they need an emergency engineer to fix their heating, they're going to get annoyed. So let's score some of the search queries from our list based on intent. If your query data came from Semrush, they often have that intent marker against the query already, the CTNI that we saw earlier: commercial, transactional, navigational, or informational. Commercial means they're in buying mode, looking for a specific brand or service, so first-time buyer mortgage. Transactional means they know what they want to do or buy, and they're on their way to do something, so like buy iPhone. Navigational means they want to go somewhere, either a physical location or a specific website that they already know about, so Barclays Bank mortgages. Informational is just that. They want information. Can you get a first-time buyer mortgage with no deposit? There are some tools out there that will help you categorize and tag up your search queries and their intent, but you can do this yourself too. What you're really doing is looking for trigger words. Things like best or cheapest usually indicate the searcher already knows what they want. They just haven't decided who from yet. Those are the commercial terms. Questions like how do I and what's the best are usually information queries. If they search for a brand name or the query is something like where is or how do I get to, those are navigational queries. And lastly, searches with their metaphorical or maybe even literally their wallet out and they're ready to go, those are the transactional ones. Once you know how to spot them, you can start to score them. Mark the search intent in a separate column on your spreadsheet. This can be really useful if you want to screen out certain intent types later, say if you want to build on your informational content. Or on the other hand, if you already have lots of informational content, but you want to build content that starts driving more conversions. So, by now, you should have scores against most of your list of search queries. You likely also have an idea of the intent behind those queries. From here, you can decide which queries you want to produce content for to help your clients improve their site's traffic. That's where we'll pick up in the next lesson. I'll see you there. Over the past few lessons, we've trimmed down your list of search queries, removed any that didn't match up to your intent, and started to group them into clusters and topics and subtopics. The next thing I do when I work with my clients is start to plan content creation based on those clusters. So let's get to it. Looking at my example client, Andrew's Finance again, you can see I've split out my research into tabs on my spreadsheet. This is based on what I found with the search volume, the topics and the intent that fit my client's goals, and the topics the client has interesting things to say about. I've got topics around first-time buyers, joint mortgages, mortgages for the over 50s, things like that. These are all going to help focus and streamline my research. Within those topics, I'll think about them as paragraphs on a page. With our HVAC definition example, you can probably explain what it stands for in one paragraph, maybe two. There may be other clusters of search queries that are a step removed from what is HVAC, but pretty closely related. Maybe some 101 on what an HVAC system is, some common HVAC setups, things like that. This all feels a little bit familiar, that's good. It's a bit like the Google People Also Ask thing, isn't it? You want to anticipate what people will ask next when you're planning your content. If you're looking for a definition of HVAC, once they find it, what do they want to know next? Maybe it's the difference between 8C and HVAC. Or does HVAC include my boiler? You may have a load of search queries around there that you could all group into one cluster, since you're probably going to be able to address all of these queries with one web page. That's the way to start thinking about it. Broad clusters of search queries broken down into smaller groups, and then building those groups around a paragraph or two of your planned content. From this, you can start to build out really great briefs for your content writers. I want you to write about this topic. The searcher's intent here is to do, know, or go and find this thing. So you need to cover these areas and address these questions. And the search queries I really want you to hit are these ones. Once you have these pieces of content mapped out, you may be able to match that up to content you already have. You don't always have to create new content. For example, I've got a cluster of search queries here about porting or moving your mortgage, but my client already has a good piece of content about that. Working with them, we may want to adapt that content to fit with these queries by updating or refreshing or expanding on it, but there's no need to create a whole new piece of content. With Andrew's Finance, they already had a What We Do page explaining a little bit about the company. And now, armed with all the keyword research, I can adapt that page, expand on it a little bit, tackle the searcher's questions in this area around what do mortgage brokers do and the whys and hows of working with brokers generally, but also with Andrew's Finance brokers especially because they're so great, obviously. Planning it out like this can also help you uncover where there may be gaps in your existing content. If you don't have existing content in an area that really matches up with your aims as a business and the intent of your target audience, you just unearth some great new areas to go after with new content tailored exactly for it. Okay, last thing on this, and something a few of you may be thinking. How do you decide which clusters to prioritize? Let's say you end up with 20 to 30 great looking clusters, all mapped out into some great paragraphs, answering lots of searcher questions, brilliantly aligned with their intent. If you don't have the resources to produce 20 to 30 great pieces of content in a week or even a few months, how do you decide which to prioritize? An analogy I like to use here is one I've stolen from project management. It's the idea of filling your jar. The jar is your website or your business's ambitions. You have some big rocks to put in it, some pebbles, and some sand. If you start with the sand, or even with the pebbles, you'll never get any of the big rocks in. If you start with the big rocks, you can fit a few of the pebbles in around them, and then the sand can fill out all the remaining space. You can get just about everything in there. The big rocks are your biggest clusters. Those that best match up with your business's aims, have a good amount of search volume, align with the searcher intent that you want, and have SERPs that you have a genuine chance of ranking well in. My big rocks would be these topic clusters around mortgages for the over 50s, buy-to-let mortgages, and overpaying your mortgage. These align well with the profitable areas that my business and my client wants to expand into. It's a good number of search queries with a decent volume, and it's in a search space where we feel like we can compete with, and it isn't dominated by a big market player. As an SEO, it is not your job to just pour search traffic all over your client's website. Most businesses would rather have fewer, well-paying customers than hundreds that pay little or nothing at all. The sand are those clusters that maybe have smaller search volumes or more competitive SERPs, things like that. My sand would be these clusters around topics with really low search volumes, no matter how hard I searched. and those in super competitive areas like equity release. We may come back to those in the future, but they're not a high priority. Everything else is the clusters in between, the pebbles. Starting with the rocks makes sense for a lot of reasons. If you're doing this for your own business, you probably want more of the sorts of visitors that are likely to improve your bottom line and meet your business's aims. If you're doing this for clients, some quick wins like getting new content up that really drives the bottom line can help you win their hearts and minds, and maybe more trust and more budget, so you can go after the pebbles in the sand later. So with Andrew's Finance, I'd start off by creating content briefs for those big rocks of content: mortgages for the over 50s, buy-to-let mortgages, and overpaying your mortgage. Then, once we've covered those, and we can spare the resources, I'd start targeting things like mortgage advisors and first-time buyers. Now, you should have a bunch of clustered queries, all prioritized as part of a coherent content strategy. Before moving on, try and have about 3 or 4 content topics you'll cover, along with the search query clusters that you'll want to target within those topics. By then, you should know what content you'll want to create and in what order. In the next lesson, we'll take a closer look at a brief that I've made for my client. I'll see you there. I've organized my search queries, I know what content I want to create to hit my client's goals, but whether I'll be writing that content myself or I'll be handing it off to someone else, we need to get our project planned out. So in this lesson, we'll walk through how you can build out a brief for both original content and content updates. If you're lucky, you'll have a content team who can write you amazing copy and produce brilliant images and videos to support it. Or you may be doing this all yourself. Either way, having a good content brief is a strong first step towards creating content. There are thousands, probably millions of ways of writing a content brief, so I'm just going to show you what works best for me. And feel free to adapt this or create your own if that works better for you. My wife, Claire, is a writer. You can Google her and find her books. She is great at writing, like really good. And like most experts in their field, they hate being told how to do their job. A good writing brief should give your writer useful information from your SEO research to help them write great content that ranks well in search for the right queries. It doesn't tell them word for word what to say, when and how. If your brief does that, you may as well just write the content yourself. So to start, you'll need some foundations in there. I include an outline explaining what I'm after and for which client. A section on the target audience for this content. Who are they? What problem are they trying to solve? Where are they in the world? How old are they? Anything that might help your writer get into the mindset of their target audience. I also include some guidance on style. If you've got a house style, great, include that. If not, think about things like tone. Is it formal or informal? Do you want lots of short, snappy paragraphs or fewer, lengthier ones? If I have examples of existing content that I want to emulate, I'll add that in here too, whether it's mine or someone else's. And then we get into the specifics for this piece of content. I'll clearly outline what the topic is for this piece of content. In this example, I want a piece about mortgage advisors. Your writer may have a great base of SEO knowledge already, but either way, you're the SEO expert. So I like to give some guidance around how to use the data that I'm sharing. Telling your writer that it's okay to repeat the question from the list of search queries, and that ideally you want them to give a short, summary answer immediately afterwards, in that first sentence, that's where as an SEO your advice can be very helpful. Lastly, before I get into the list of search queries I want them to target in the content, I'll give some examples of strong competitor content in this area. It can be helpful for the writer to see what's already out there. You may have heard this called the skyscraper technique or phrases like that. It's basically saying, here's the best content out there now, and we need this piece to be even better. Then we're into the search queries themselves. I group them by topic area. Often the writers will use these as headings or section titles. Within those sections, you'll see I've got subtopics. So within Do I Need a Mortgage Advisor, I've got subtopics such as Can a Mortgage Broker ... and some related questions there. This is all from the same cluster around Do I Need a Mortgage Broker and the questions that stem from that, like Do I need a mortgage broker to get a bigger mortgage? When the writer tackles those questions, they'll answer those queries. And by doing that, we're addressing the search's intent and demonstrating to Google that we have the answers to those questions. My brief process for content updates is pretty much the same. Again, I'll be pretty explicit here to help my writer. I'll tell them this is a piece of content that we want updated and explain why we want to update it. Then I'll explain the parts of the content that I'd like to keep, if any. It may be that you just want to keep the URL but otherwise totally rewrite the content. That's okay too. Then again, the section of the brief on the search queries, the topics and subtopics that you want to cover is the same as it was for a new piece of content. So now you've gone full circle from initial research to a brand new piece of content designed to hit the brief. But your work doesn't end here. Over the next few lessons, we'll talk through some of the more technical things that can affect your work, starting with Google's updates. I'll meet you in the next lesson and we'll talk through it. Just as you start to feel comfortable, you've done this Wix SEO course, you've learned a lot, you're putting it into practice, you're starting to feel like maybe you do understand this SEO thing after all. And then Google moves the goalposts. Welcome to the world of Google algorithm updates. In this lesson, you'll learn about how Google's algorithm updates can affect your work as an SEO. Google updates their algorithms a lot. If you're a grizzled old SEO veteran like me, you may remember the Florida update of 2003, the first big Google algorithm update. It's important to say that nobody can ever be 100% sure precisely what each update does. But overnight, many top-ranking sites lost their rankings. Most of these were spam sites, but many legitimate sites lost their positions too. Google is constantly working on their search systems. There are literally hundreds of people working on it all the time. In some court cases, Google have been forced to reveal just how many updates they make to their search algorithms, and it's up into the many thousands each year. So on average, it's changing more than once a day. Some of them are just bug fixes or tweaked code, moving a comma or two. Others are these much bigger updates that SEOs concern themselves with. But in this era of core updates, Google rarely says what the update was focused on. For Google, it's a little bit of trying to improve their product, as well as to keep their customers and advertisers happy. But it can also feel a bit random. Unfortunately, there are lots of folks out there trying to trick Google and cheat their way to the top of the rankings. Back in the day, it used to be an arms race of backlinks. If you had 100 links pointing to your website and I had 101, I'd rank higher. That system became pretty easy to game. Google evolved their system to root out those spammy backlink sites and discount them from their algorithm and ranking signals. And then the spammers found a new way to try and trick the algorithm. So Google changed the algorithm again, and so the cycle continues. That's one of the reasons that Google's so cagey about what their updates do. They don't want to give the game away to the spammers and scammers. They stick to this same basic mantra of just create great content and trust Google to do the rest. Google updates are a fact of life, like death and taxes. They're coming whether you like it or not. So my biggest piece of advice to those worried about Google updates is, don't panic. That's not to say you should just ignore the updates. Keep your head down and try and keep doing the right things. Sure, you should do that, but you should also get your head up and try and see where things are going. Google's updates almost always gear towards increasing the quality of the sites that appear at the top of the search results. If you have quality content, Google isn't likely to punish you for it. If you've been creating junk content to try and trick Google into ranking you or using hacked sites to try and promote your website, then you should be more worried about Google updates. If you've been doing anything morally questionable purely with the intent of tricking Google, not just helping your users, chances are you're going to get negatively impacted by a Google update one day. In SEO circles, people talk about black hat SEO and white hat SEO. Broadly, black hat is deliberately going against Google's guidelines and/or their terms of service in an attempt to try and get higher rankings. White hat's the opposite, coloring within the lines, trying to do the right thing for customers and hoping that Google notices and rewards you. By now, you should have a good idea of what search engines are looking for. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at some detailed strategies to prove your client's E-E-A-T to search engines. I'll meet you there. Wayne Gretzky is one of the greatest ice hockey players of all time. When he was asked why he was so good, he said, "I skate to where the puck is going to be." As an SEO, that's where you want to be regarding Google updates. If you're scrabbling around trying to fix things after your traffic tanks following an update, you're already in a bad spot. By looking at the updates, you can see what sort of things Google is rewarding and what they're penalizing, and you can adjust your strategy accordingly. So in this lesson, we'll talk about two things that can help you stay on Google's good side: QRGs and your E-E-A-T. The QRGs, or Google's Quality Rater Guidelines, can give you an idea of which direction Google's trying to move in. We talked about the QRG already in this module, but to recap, quality raters are the people Google gets to test all their updates and changes, but they don't directly impact the search results. If a quality rater hates your website, they don't put a marker against it that says, "Move this site down the rankings." Google's spam teams are the ones that can do that. The quality raters are effectively training Google systems to understand what good and bad looks like. And in this world of AI and learning systems, feedback is crucial. The machines need to know this is good and this is bad, so the systems can start to differentiate for themselves. If you take the time to read through the QRGs, look at the signals that Google tells its quality raters to look at in terms of how you know when you can trust a website, how you know if information is up to date, how you know if a given author is an expert on this topic. Once you've done your research about what the machines want and what they're likely to want in the future, you'll need to think about how you prove it. How do you prove to a machine that your client is good at what they do? Obviously, your client thinks they're the best at what they do, but how does a machine know? They're going to look at things like reviews and ratings, citations and certifications, their listings and backgrounds, all that sort of stuff. Essentially, Google wants you to prove that you have the experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, or EEAT. This is lifted straight out of the QRGs. It's basically Google trying to put metrics and scores against this sort of thing that we're talking about. And Google lays out exactly what they mean by experience, expertise, and authoritativeness. For experience, they say, the extent to which the content creator has the necessary first-hand or life experience for the topic. Many types of pages are trustworthy and achieve their purpose well when created by people with a wealth of personal experience. For example, which would you trust? A product review from somebody who has personally and used the product, or a review by somebody who's not? Think about how you demonstrate your experience in a topic or an area to a machine like Google. For products, they're looking for things like original photography. If you're reviewing a product, how can you prove you've actually used it? Unique original photos or videos are a great way to do that. Next, Google considers expertise, the extent to which the content creator has the necessary knowledge or skill for the topic. Different topics require different levels and types of experience and expertise to be trustworthy. For example, which would you trust? Home electrical rewiring advice from a skilled electrician, or from an antique homes enthusiast who has no knowledge of electrical wire? These days, everyone's an expert on something, but how do you demonstrate expertise? Industry-recognized awards, certifications, and qualifications are one good way. If you showcase your awards and qualifications on your website, make sure you cite them, link to a verifiable external source that proves that you won or earned it. Think about what you're doing right now. Why are you listening to me? Because I am supposedly an SEO expert, but how do you know? Well, Wix chose me for this course, which shows an endorsement or a recommendation from them, which is nice. If you Google me, you can find out things about me, and if you exclude all the stuff that I wrote myself, you can find other people saying that I'm an expert on this topic. I've given talks at conferences and events, I've had articles published in industry-leading publications, I've got some relevant, verifiable qualifications and experience. These are all good clues that I may know a thing or two about SEO, hopefully. So think about how you can demonstrate expertise in a given field for your clients. Next up, Google says authoritativeness is the extent to which the content creator or the website is known as the go-to source for the topic. While most topics don't have one authoritative official website or content creator, when they do, that website or content creator is often amongst the most reliable and trustworthy sources. For example, a local business profile page on social media may be the authoritative, trusted source on what is on sale right now. And the official government page for getting a passport is the unique, official, authoritative source for passport renewals. A good way I find to think about authority is to think about a problem you might have at home. You may need your lawnmower fixed, or maybe you need a great chocolate cake recipe, and everyone says, oh, you should talk to Lenny or Larry or Linda. They're great with that. How do you know that Linda's great with that? Because everybody says so. So for me, the largest part of proving your authoritativeness is links. Links from other authoritative websites to yours, citing you as an expert on X, Y, or Z. As with all things backlinks, the key is quality, not quantity. A link from the local newspaper saying you're the best baker in town is going to be more beneficial than 10 links from 10 random bloggers saying that you make nice cakes. You'll learn more about how to get these links in the link building module of this course. You can see there's some similarities here. All of these EEAT signals overlap in some way. If you have some great original content that demonstrates your experience and your expertise that's super useful to lots of people in your industry, it could be some original research or just a great walkthrough on how to do a specific tricky job, then they're likely to link to it. They're saying you're really good at it and they make useful content, and that's a signal to Google that you're authoritative. It's about consistency. One great cake does not make you the world's greatest baker. You need to be consistently producing authoritative content and being cited for it. And last but most importantly in the E-E-A-T family, trust. Untrustworthy pages have low E-E-A-T no matter how experienced, expert or authoritative they may seem. For example, a financial scam is untrustworthy, even if the content creator is a highly experienced and expert scammer who's considered the go-to on running scams. How do you make people in the offline world trust you? You earn their trust, right? We're back to consistency again. Demonstrating that you're trustworthy and reliable takes time. But you can send good signals to both users and search engines that demonstrate your trustworthiness. Things like looking after your users by having your site on HTTPS with an up-to-date SSL certificate. It's a good start. If you take payments, demonstrating that you'll look after their payments and their personal details and their bank information, that's good too. Think about things which make you look untrustworthy. Deceptive links which say one thing but do another. Annoying pop-ups, high-pressure sales techniques. Those are the things to avoid. If you're hearing all of this good stuff and thinking, yep, that's me, that's my client, remember, you need to prove it to search engines. So now you have a good idea of how Google rates the quality of a website, and you can start to evaluate your client sites and their E-E-A-T. In the next lesson, we're going to do it all over again, this time for the competition. I'll meet you there. It's time to scope out the competition. And to be clear, the sites that Google shows you on the SERPs that you'd like to rank in, those are your competitors. The businesses that you or your client might feel are your competitors and who Google ranks in the SERPs that you want to target may not necessarily be the same thing. Sure, sometimes it is, and there's often a bit of overlap, but you'll probably find when you look at the SERPs, there are a whole bunch of businesses and companies in there that you didn't initially consider as competitors, but who, SEO-wise, certainly are. So before we wrap up this module, we'll cover how to identify those SEO competitors, evaluate their E-E-A-T, and strategically improve your client's E-E-A-T to beat them. We've covered this a ton in this course, but there are a whole load of SEO tools out there that can help you analyze your competitors. Our friends Semrush is a great one. Semrush can give you a list of competitors and even show you how many search queries your site overlaps with them on. And you can even see which of you is coming out on top most often. It's very handy. You can do this without the tools if you want to, especially now you're armed with your handy list of target search queries that you're going after, and you've narrowed it down to the 3 or 4 new topics that you're going to produce amazing new content on. With that list of search queries, you can, well, search for them on Google. Remember Andrew's Finance? Let's look at some of the queries that I have in my spreadsheet around the topic of mortgages for the over 50s. Can I get a mortgage at 50? Mortgages for the over 60s, retirement mortgages. And we can see just from those 3 examples how the competition is shaping up. We've got some big financial institutions there like Legal & General and the Post Office. We've also got comparison sites like Compare the Market and USwitch. And there are those that my client might consider more direct competition, like other mortgage advisors. You'll start to get a pretty clear idea of who's showing up in the results most often, who's doing a good job of their SEO efforts in this area, who's consistently ranking in and around those coveted top 3 spots, and who's appearing in any of the SERP features like the featured snippets or the answer boxes. Those are your SERP competitors. And if there are some internet Goliaths in there, your Amazons, your Wikipedias and Walmarts, those can be hard to shift. Not to say you can't compete with them, you can. Can you demonstrate more expertise, experience and authority in your specific area of expertise than Amazon can? You bet you can. Overtaking sites like that is hard, and it can be more of a long-term play. Now, with all you've learned from this course so far, you can look at your client's competitors with a critical eye. Why does Google rank them so well? What do they have that Google likes? Is their content amazing? Do they measure up on E-E-A-T factors? Are they trustworthy? Are they well known? Do they have lots of industry awards? Are they talked about and linked to by other experts in this topic area? Are they demonstrating their expertise? Let's look at this competitor. What do they have that reflects all we've talked about around E-E-A-T? Do they look trustworthy? Well, they have clear contact information, phone numbers, emails. And down here, I can see social media links. And there's some long legal-looking text here about how they're regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority with their registration number. I've checked and this is genuine. It is them and that's the postal address that matches. The site's HTTPS too, which should be a given these days, but it's always a good sign. I looked them up on Trustpilot too and I found a profile that matches their information and it's got lots of reviews, most of them 5 stars. Pretty good. How about the content? Well, it's clear, it's easy to read. There are headings and subheadings that address topic-relevant information. The content's pretty decent too. What does Semrush think? By toggling between exact URL and root domain, we can look at metrics for this particular page or for their site as a whole. It looks like this is a pretty new piece of content. There aren't any links pointing to this page specifically, which is interesting. Now let's look at the domain. Plenty of links from several hundred different domains. Not bad. And we can see they've improved pretty sharply over the last few years. It's safe to say that Google likes them. By using internal links to this page, they can shine some of that light onto this page, even though it doesn't have any noted links from third-party sites yet. Now flip all that over on its head. What don't they have that your client could do better? The image is a stock image. A quick search with Google Lens shows that this image appears in lots of photo stock libraries. Not great. Who wrote this piece? We can see the author at them, but who are they? There's no link to an author profile, no photo. Digging around, I found they do have a profile page for them on the site, but there's no proof of their qualifications or their expertise. That's an opportunity for my client if we want to compete with them. Those social media profiles I mentioned earlier, they've only got 2 followers on X. That's not great. They do have that legalese at the bottom about the Financial Conduct Authority, but I think they're required to have that. There's no mention of awards that they won or certifications their staff have. Another opportunity for my client to show they're more authoritative and have greater expertise in this area. These are the sort of things you need to look for with your client's competitors. Now turn that critical eye to your client's website. What are their unique selling points or USPs? What does your client's business have that the competition doesn't? Are they cheaper, faster, better, bigger, more experienced, more trustworthy? Are you sure? Be honest. It can be really hard looking at a competitor and thinking, actually, you know what? They're better than us here. But that's okay. At least you know where you stand. You can then turn your attention elsewhere, focus on some other areas where you have fewer, less strong competitors. Or you can dive in and decide, okay, they're better than us now, but we're going to overhaul them by doing this, this, and this. For example, my client has won lots of industry awards and they can prove it. I'll be sure to show those off. They've got lots of great customer reviews on Trustpilot and on Google, but I'll be sure to put those front and center, unlike some of their competitors, so the customers can see and check them easily. I can put a named author on the content too, one with verifiable linked to proof of their qualifications, their certifications, and their experience. I can even cite some stories in national news publications where they've been quoted as an authoritative source. Timeliness is important too. Putting published dates on my content will help reassure both users and search engines that this advice is up to date. And you can add a line like last updated when you need to adjust your content to keep it fresh. With that in mind, I'm feeling quite confident about trying to get my client to rank in search results against this sort of competition. One thing the competition in this area has is a lot more content. My client's pretty new to this sort of thing, producing content with SEO in mind, so they don't have very many pages on their site at the moment, maybe only 20. The competition, even the smaller ones, have hundreds or thousands with some of the big national and international brands. Building up some topical authority may be more of a long-term play for this client. We'll need to be prepared for some competitors to outrank us for a while yet, while we build up our library of good, well-researched, useful content. What do I mean by topical authority? Think about it like this. If I write an article on SEO, you might read it. Google might read it too. You may see that I've written and talked about SEO quite a lot, and I've been mentioned in lots of places that know their SEO. My topical authority on SEO should be quite good. Now, if I wrote a piece about football, am I an authority on that subject? Maybe, maybe not. Have I ever written about football before? No. Is my knowledge of football any good? Debatable. Do other people say that I know my football? They do not. My topical authority on football is pretty low. For Google, or for anyone to see you as an authority on a topic, you need to be consistent and build up a corpus of content on that topic. One new blog post does not make me an expert on football. But if I wrote one new piece a month, and then I was invited onto radio and TV shows and I started to build my reputation around the topic, then my topical authority starts to increase. It's the same with the content in your area. Andrew's Finance may be a mortgage broker, that's a good start. It does not make them an authority on the topic. As we start to build out their amazing new content with guides and advice on all sorts of related financial areas, and other sites start to cite our work because it's so good, that helps build their topical authority in this chosen area. Okay, we've covered a lot, but there's one more thing I want to show you. In the next lesson, we'll cover how to set the right goals for your content strategy. I'll meet you there. When you find SERPs and search queries you can go after, where the competition isn't a country mile ahead of you, those could be your short-term goals to rank for in the SERPs. It's a little like the marketing tenet about the red ocean and the blue ocean. The red ocean is full of other fish, bigger fish, and lots of sharks. It's a fight to survive in the red ocean. But it's popular for a reason. There may be a lot more customers over there and a lot more potential revenue. The blue ocean is calmer, clearer, maybe less popular, but also less competitive. You may need to fight in the red ocean to establish yourself as a new business, but you should also try and build yourself a base in the blue ocean too. So in this lesson, let's talk about setting the right goals for your content strategy. Having a large slice of a small cake is often better than having a teeny tiny slice of a bigger cake. If you're building new products or working in new markets around ideas that didn't exist until you or your client created it, that's going to be you in the blue ocean. A few years ago, no one had ever heard of ChatGPT. If you were doing keyword research for the ChatGPT team, you'd have 0 search queries with 0 search volume all over the place. That ocean would be so blue you wouldn't even be able to see another fish. But look at this, the Google Trends data for the term ChatGPT. That's the blue line on the chart. Back in October, like 0 search interest in ChatGPT. And then, just a few months later, they're up around the same kind of search volumes as Nike. So pick your oceans and adjust your strategy accordingly. If no one has ever heard of your client, you've got a lot of educating to do. You're going to need content around why their new product or service is a great alternative to the iPhone or the Dyson vacuum cleaner, or whatever it is the solution that they're offering. If you're in the red ocean, chances are searchers already know about the sorts of things that your client offers. So they want to hear about why they should choose you over all the other fish in the sea. Different oceans, different tactics. In my client's case, they are very much in the red ocean. Mortgages are a well-established market with some big players. So putting all my research together, I know that competing for the big, high-volume terms is going to be tricky. But they have some unique strengths and advantages that we can take advantage of to help them to be the best of the rest when customers want to go beyond what the big players offer, like independent advice. So I'm going to steer them towards some specialist areas where they can really focus their efforts, build on the E-E-A-T strengths they have, and improve on some others, and carve out a part of that niche where they can dominate. Now you know a bit more about the how, where, and why of scoping out your competitors. The key thing to remember here is this is not a one and done. Things change all the time. Rankings change, competitors change, new rivals emerge, old ones die off, new products come to market, you get it. But customers change too. The language that customers use change. Their requirements and their expectations change. You need to keep your competitor analysis up to date. Ranking in search is a zero-sum game. For someone to move up the rankings, hopefully you, someone else has to move down. And if your competitor moves down, they're not likely to be happy about it, so they're going to make efforts to improve their things and move back up. And with new players entering and exiting the market all the time, how often you need to update your competitor research is another one of those it depends questions. If you're in a fast-moving sector like technology or fashion, you're probably going to need to keep it more up to date than if you're in a sector with fewer short-term changes like tax or agriculture. By keeping an eye on your SERPs and on your competitors, you should get good early warning signs about when things are changing, and that should inform how often you want to update your larger competitor research projects. All right, it's time to recap and wrap this module up. Meet me in the next lesson for a quick conclusion. And just like that, it's time to wrap things up. We've covered a lot in this module, so let's quickly recap everything you've learned. First, we went over some of the basics, what keywords are, how to research them using third-party tools and your client's site itself, and how to create your own spreadsheet to keep all of your search queries organized. Then we talked about sorting through that research, making clusters, creating a scoring system, and filtering them based on metrics like search volume and intent. And once we organized our research and identified our target search queries, we talked about creating a content strategy, from creating a content brief to setting smart goals for your new and updated content. So now I'll leave you to it. Good luck putting your new skills to work, and thanks for following along.